I actually had at one in the middle of one podcast. I was like, "Oh shit! I think I spelled weird wrong," and then I had to look it up,
Yeah.
which is hilarious because that's like a very homeschooled move to do is spelled like something like that wrong and not even notice.
At least you didn't do it wired.
Just
Just get it completely wrong.
Yeah.
Which is how I type. I'm the worst like texting lately. Oh, I can't send a text without at least two terribly blatant either grammatical or spelling errors.
Yeah.
Or a word that doesn't exist.
Yeah, what did I spell today? It was WWWK. I meant to say week.
Fat fingers.
For the week, you know?
Got fat fingers.
Bad, same. Yeah, what have you been up to?
Holidays and then working as much as possible, getting as much done as I can so I can have these days off. This past week I went up to Michigan to visit my folks.
Nice.
Hang out with my mom for a few days. I now have a additional respect for you hanging out with your mom all day long when you were a kid because I can barely do it as an adult for 2 hours. I love my parents, but they're old. They're old. My dad's an old grumpy man, and mom she's going to live to be 100 and something, and she's already kind of bored, I think, with not having anything to do. So I helped them out around the house. I tried to help what I'm calling senior-proof the kitchen a little bit. Because they have an older kitchen.
Yeah.
Like the doors are magnetically closed. So
that's cool.
And then they have little handles on them. That's actually one of the things I got to fix is get bigger handles so it's easier for somebody to grab and open, take the magnets off, make them self-closing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like it's, you have to grasp and grab. Well, her oven was put in 1978.
Wow.
And the dials on it barely turn. So she's got to, like, I can hardly turn them. And I've got strong dexterity and I'm like, I can barely turn that knob. I'm like, how do you do this to turn it to like baking temperature? She's like, just like this. She's over there going, So rather than replace the whole stove, because I want to renovate their whole kitchen, for Christmas, I got her a toaster oven. Immediately, she started just cooking in that thing. She's like, this thing's great. I'm like,
that's amazing.
I'm like,
use that
instead of trying to, And shit, my dad, he just eats peanut butter sandwiches almost every meal anyway, so he don't care.
Simple man.
You can't serve that man anything but a peanut butter sandwich, I swear. I got him to eat chili at lunch. That's it. But they're getting old. We're all getting old. I just turned 50.
When?
Like last month, man. Middle of last month.
Where was I?
I didn't do anything for my birthday.
I feel shitty.
It's not like I don't have the old, whatever the box you tick on Facebook that tells everybody that it's your birthday.
I don't do that.
I don't have that box ticked.
I don't either, but that's for professional reasons.
Yeah. So Holly and I went out to dinner. That was enough. Frankly, that was enough.
Nice.
So it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, I got together with Kim and Jerome and Lindsay the other night. It was fun. I had a good time.
I haven't seen any of those people in forever.
I know. Well, Kim just got engaged.
I read that.
Yeah. Not a lot of fanfare there, but that's how it's supposed to be done. That guy's Dan's cool.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's a really sweet guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We decided the other day, who was I talking to? I think I was talking to Melanie. We decided that she likes the nerdly guys. That's like her shtick. He's a good dude, though. I do like that guy. But even the other ones were all kind of nerdly. The last boyfriend was a little geeky, too. The doctor.
Oh, yeah. He was like almost cool, like...
He was weird geeky.
I didn't like him.
Yeah. It's not somebody that I would trust. Like, He's like, hey, I was looking for a family doctor at the time. He's like, yeah, just come in. And I'm like, no.
Something sketchy about him.
Yeah.
Oh, the one after him, too.
Oh, there was the one that was baby daddy for a little while, too.
Oh, yeah. I actually never met him.
He was kind of a doofus, too.
I don't think I ever met him.
God, her kid, I haven't seen her kid in a couple of years. He's got to be...
He's big now.
Yeah, big and wild.
Yeah, he wanted to get into skateboarding. So I went over there and I bought him the skateboard. It was funny because I must have sent her 100 different skateboards. The one I really wanted to get was one with a panda bear on it. And I was like, well, I can't just assume the Asian kid wants the one with the panda bear. So we sent her 100.
So you got a Hello Kitty one instead?
Yeah. Powerpuff Girls. I got so I sent her 100 skateboards, 100 different ones. And of course, she picks the one with the panda bear on it. Yeah. He's going to like the one with the panda bear on it. I was like, that was the one I was originally going to get.
Well, it just shows that you know what you're doing.
Well, that was like, I love the brand. That brand of skateboards, one of my favorites. The trucks that, like, if you buy a complete board, normally it's like really awkward and like a pre-assembled skateboard is usually like just mishmashed of shit that they throw onto a skateboard, and these usually suck. And so this one was actually really nice. It came with like tensor trucks, Enjoy wheels, Enjoy skate deck, Red Bones bearings. Like, it was a well put together complete. So that's why I wanted to get it.
Yeah.
So it was only like $60. I was like,
"This is a hell of a deal."
Yeah, it's insane. So I ended up buying it for him, and then I took it all apart.
Make him put it together.
Mm-hmm. I wish somebody would have done that when I first started skateboarding, because man, I fucked up a lot of different things.
Yeah, you know what you're doing. Plus, the first time you break the deck, what are you doing? You're breaking the whole thing back down anyway.
Sure. So yeah, I taught him how to grip it on my skateboard, because I was putting together like a whole new setup for vert. So I have like 4 skateboards now. It's crazy.
That's right. You told me the other day you're getting back in.
Yeah, it's been fun. I missed it. I haven't hurt myself yet. Too bad. I did bruise my tailbone there for a minute, but I was out for about like 2-3 weeks.
You know what I started?
What?
Curling.
Again?
I've never done it. I've never done it in a real setting.
Because you had that little obstacle in the backyard for a while.
I built a sheet of ice in the backyard, but that only lasted, and it never really froze through. So I'm currently being considered for membership.
Oh, nice!
In the Mayfield Curling Club.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to become proficient. I'm going to become good. My first outing was not good, and it is a lot more. When I was a kid, and you'd go out to my parents' club.
Oh, so you have a history with it.
Yeah, well, my parents have been curling since probably the 60s.
I mean, that makes sense because you guys get such cold climate up there.
Yeah. The club in Lewiston, the Lewiston Curling Club, is one of the oldest clubs in the country. There wasn't very many of them. It was because it's close to Canada. There was Canadians come down and they'd be visiting. Hey, we need a curling club. So Mayfield has one. So I went down there and I'm going through their membership program, which is like learning to curl. Basically, it looks simple on TV when you're watching the Olympics. It is the game itself is complicated, but physically, I'm sore from a day of curling
because there's so much like balancing you have to do on ice, and you're moving with like a broom.
Yep, and the broom you're actually working. Like that's like shoveling snow. You're like I'm putting all 225 pounds on that broom, going back and forth, and spending a lot of time using muscles that I didn't know I had, just trying to stay standing.
Yeah. That's my head. Like
the lunge, like, when you're taking the shot, the lunge, I pulled something immediately.
That's like, yeah.
I'm like, I did that at like 50, and then I see all these other old people like, they're like, oh, and I'm like, that's.
You're very fit 50, luckily. You're like, my doctor was like, you need to start exercising and lose weight. And my psychiatrist is like, you need a hobby because you're going crazy.
Skating.
So I was like, I combined the two ideas together, and it's been fun. I've been enjoying it. And it's kind of like, you get to kind of do it at your own pace where you're in a competition. So you kind of have to put it in.
Yeah, for you, you can just go do it whenever you want. For me, I got to have, 7 other people show up.
Yeah, that's another reason.
And I got to do it in a place. I can't just go outside and do it. I got to go to a very specific location that has very specific equipment and a very specific court and go do it.
You don't get to determine downtime.
Right. Yeah, I got to do it when it's available. Mm-hmm. Like tonight I'm playing soccer. I got to have, 10 other people there.
Yeah, I couldn't. I can't. That's what I was like, I
need to
when I was talking to my doctor about it, I was like, what you just said stressed me the fuck out because I was like, I don't have the time to do anything organized. I can't do a yoga class. You know what I mean? Like it has to be when I can fit it into my schedule.
Like you might just 1 minute go, I'm gonna go do that now.
Yeah.
I need more of that in my life, but with I enjoy planned and organized athletics. I'm not going to go run. Like running is that one that you're like, I'm going to run today, or I'm going to go to the gym.
I hate the gym.
I'm like, oh, I have a membership. I think I used it. I got it last year. I used it twice.
I just canceled 2 of the 3 I had.
Yeah. I'm like, and every time I go, I'm like, oh, I can do this again. And I'm like, I don't need that. But I like the structure of the organized sports. But I love, competition. I love competing. But I can't run. But that's the one where you can just get up and go do it. Or skate, you can just get up and go do it. I suppose in the wintertime, if I was in the right climate, I could cross-country ski or do something else. But there's no competition in that.
Yeah.
There's not even, So I need competition and playing video games is not a physical competition.
No. So. I don't, I'm not I don't mind not having competition. Like, if it's something where it's dependent on me pushing myself, that's good. That's a good... And it's nice when just rolling around and like just clearing your head. And
I like the idea of skating because you can set some sort of goal for yourself. Like I'm going to perfect this trick, or this move, or I'm going to do whatever, and you can just focus on that and do it over. It's like learning to play a musical instrument, really.
Yeah, that or it's a lot like comedy, in my opinion. Like
you're constantly refining it.
You
can always get better.
Yeah, and it's about failing. Like it's like comedy is a lot of failing. So it's just falling and getting up, falling and doing it again over and over again. Like it took me like 4 hours to get what would normally take me when I was younger, it would take me like 20 minutes. But it took me 4 hours to get a board slide done.
It's funny you mentioned failure because I was just listening to a master class, and I can't remember the woman's first name. Her last name is Blakely. She is the founder or the inventor of Spanx.
Yeah, she's a very fascinating woman.
Yeah, and I've watched the masterclass, and then I was on XM, and there's a masterclass channel or something on XM because they were playing excerpts from the masterclasses, and she talked about how her father taught her how to fail. And what he would do is every day at dinner, he would ask her and her brother. I think it was her brother. I'm going to get the story slightly wrong. You can look into it yourself.
I've heard her story before,
but she says every day Dad would ask, what did you fail at today? And if you didn't have something that you tried and failed at, he would challenge you over it. Like, well, you didn't have a successful day if you didn't try and fail at something. And the reality is every time you fail, you're learning from the failure to get better at either whatever you're doing there or you apply it to something else.
Sure.
So there was a lesson in that. That's probably a reason why it made the, what was a 6-hour masterclass, it made the highlights of, the 1 hour condensed version of her masterclass. That's probably why it made it because it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and it's one of the things I remembered while I'm driving from that hour of listening, and I don't remember any of the rest of her masterclass except that she came up with Spanx.
Yeah, because
and she knows Oprah. I remember that part too.
Yeah, Oprah was her big break.
Oprah was a lot of people's big break.
Yeah.
What's the knuckleheaded Bieber? He broke on Oprah too.
Did he?
I believe so.
Wow.
He was just a little squirt playing the drums. Wish he'd have stayed that way.
What was I just about to say? It doesn't matter. We can get moving.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause for a second so I can get a clean cut. All right. Welcome to Not Weird, Just Homeschooled with your host, Jeremy Demery. I'm very excited about my guest today. My guest today is Patrick Thornton. Without Patrick, none of this you see here would be possible. So there's that. Patrick owns an architecture firm and called Sixmo, and he's a good buddy of mine. We've been friends now for 7 years?
7 years, something like that.
Yeah. So he's seen me kind of like in the last develop as like a more of a responsible young man as opposed to I was like, you caught me right at like the transitional period of being like a total degenerate into like an adult.
I feel like I caught the tail end of it could be measured by the tail end of music and the beginning of comedy.
Yeah, that is, for sure. Yeah, that's it. That's right where the crossroads were for sure. Because like things with all dinosaurs were just kind of fizzling out then, and then comedy started to become more part of like my artistic endeavors, and yeah, I didn't even think about that. That is true.
Yeah,
But
I recognized that the other day. I thought, well, and you've blossomed into a bit of a small business entrepreneurial type, and like you've taken a 180-degree turn.
I've diversified the amount of failure.
Yes, yes.
Yes, I've expanded the amount of areas I can fail in, whether it be comedy, podcasts, skateboarding.
Why fail at one thing when you can fail at 10?
Yeah, exactly.
You can win at failing.
Yeah, if there were an award for failure, I'd definitely win. I'd be a shoo-in for that reward.
I don't know. You're doing pretty good. I'm pretty proud of this. A lot of the things that you've done. So
thank you. I've been having fun, so that's good. You know, without that, it's like, what the hell are we even doing? You know, there's no money, there's no success. But like, what if you're not having fun? You're fucked. Like you just
if you don't have to make a ton of money to succeed.
I agree.
But if you're not having fun, you're probably not going to feel like you're succeeding.
Right. If you're not having fun, then it's a total loss. Yeah. Like what the hell are you doing? Like you're just driving yourself crazy for zero reason.
Yeah. When you get up in the morning, if you don't get to don't look forward to doing what you want to do, then you're not setting yourself up for a good day.
So you grew up in like northern Michigan. How many siblings do you have?
I have one older sister.
One older sister.
Yeah.
And so kind of give us an idea of like what like this whole podcast is really about like social abnormalities about how like, you know what I mean? Like we all have, despite whether or not you were homeschooled, I think it's more prevalent in homeschoolers because there's just so many scenarios in which we just never got in order to socially develop. So, but like I finding more and more as I talk to people that like everybody kind of has those little quirks, and a lot of it is developed kind of like at a younger age,
in an early stage.
Yeah, and like they're like upbringing or where they were raised, despite their relationship with other people. Yeah. I think even just the setting alone is kind of is played a part into that. So kind of give like people like an idea of like when you were growing up, like what was your hometown like?
Yeah, so I'm from a very small town in northern Michigan called Lewiston, and every grade had 20 or 15 or 20 kids in it. So very, very small, very, very close community, but also sheltered from the rest of the world.
Sure.
We weren't a suburb.
Right.
We were a dot in the middle of the forest. Still are. I was just there this past weekend. It's still a dot in the middle of the forest. So we weren't exposed to a lot of experiences. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. We weren't exposed to a lot of the experiences of the 70s and 80s that someone in Cleveland or Parma or one of the suburbs of Cleveland or any city. Or,
yeah, I mean, I basically grew up in the flats for the most part. Yeah,
I didn't have any of those experiences. For me, the tallest building I'd ever seen was my cousin's house. It was 3 stories.
Wow.
The tallest things around were trees, not buildings. Yeah, there was a lot of tall trees. White people, a lot of white people.
Sure.
I didn't have a exposure aside from summer vacation when we would visit my family in Texas to an African American, and I think for me, it probably had the opposite impact that it had on a lot of rural kids that just listened to what their parents were saying. For me, it was just like I didn't see any difference because it was.
Yeah,
I didn't have that.
Or almost made it seem like cool and exotic in a sense because it's something different,
And I remember, touching an afro and going, that's really cool, But I didn't feel like those people were any different. I think that was something that, and I look back at my parents going, well, I'm glad my parents weren't terrible racists because, boy, when you're in a rural environment,
And you're isolated like that.
It's because you don't have exposure to them. So we were limited in the exposure. You know, the type of music we listened to, the type of TV we had. We had 3 TV stations, and only one of them came in, and it was PBS.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
They were tough to tune in. The radio was all country music. We would get, my sister and I would listen to Casey Kasem's Top 40 once in a while if the station would come in, but it didn't always come in. So we were only exposed to very specific things growing up. And I don't know if that didn't make me want to leave there, but a lot of people that come up in those environments, you either stay there or you can't wait to get the fuck out of there.
You're right.
And, you know, I had some other influences that brought me down here to Cleveland, but, you know, the people that stayed there, and they, in a lot of ways, kind of became what you would expect in a sheltered environment.
Yeah.
The ones that left, most of them never come back.
Was there ever like any kind of like in between, like, you know, people who just kind of, they left for a little while and came back? And
you would see that a little bit. People would go to the city for a job, you know, mom and dad to get a job, or you might get a job at Ford or something, or GM, and go to the big city and live there.
Got it.
And maybe come back. I actually have, so I grew up, I have one sister that I grew up with, but 10 cousins all in one family. So between 2 families, there was 12 kids. So you can do the math. There's 10, and, you know, one woman had 10 kids. And some of those kids would go off to college and then go live in the big city for a while. But boom, almost all of them are back. I mean, things have changed slightly since then, but they learned that they didn't like the big city.
So who would you say, like, growing up was like just such a huge influence on your, like, oh, like this person's very cool, and they showed you like kind of like, they would kind of like set you on the path of like what's now you're like, I guess like a tastemaker in a sense, like what was like was there an influence or a person that you like
early in life? You know, I lived there till I was 10, and then my father got a political position, and we relocated to the capital for a few years. But you know, until I was about 10. You know, a couple of the older boys, the cousins, the older boys, those were they were the cool kids.
Yeah. How was that a culture shock from moving from like somewhere so rural and then living?
It was a huge change to know every single person in town, and then go to a bigger city. You know, a city. First of all, from a village to a city is a huge difference. And it wasn't necessarily that I knew everybody. It's just nobody knew who I was.
Sure.
When walking around Lewiston, Michigan, even to this day, I'll walk around there and people, you know, I'm only there 4 times a year, and they still wave, and, you know, a lot of them will come up to me and talk to me about something that they know about me that I don't even know who the hell they are half the time. Most of the time I do, but then you go to the city, to a big environment, you know, a high school with, you know, 1,500 kids instead of, you know, 100.
Sure.
It was a big difference. And I wouldn't say I was a big fish in a little pond that moved, you know, to become a little fish in a big pond. I was just an average kid in the little pond. And then I go to the big city, and I was just like, wow, that was a huge difference. So I kind of had 2 different phases to my childhood. You know, one of them I would look up to what the older kids in my family were up to and what they were doing. And you try to aspire to, I want to, you know, Michael was a big track guy. I want to be the track guy, or Ted's a baseball player. I want to be the baseball player. Charles was a kicker at football. Usually it was the male. For me, it was the men. I wasn't necessarily looking at the ladies going, I want to, you know, become a nurse.
I mean, a lot of us were that way. I mean,
yeah. I think it's, you know, your dad gets over top of you and he wants to, you know, form you or mold you into his image in a lot of ways. My dad didn't really do that, but
mine either. But
I think it's just natural to gravitate towards the, you know, the older people of the same sex.
Sure,
they really do. They're supposed to be, you know, role models for you.
Absolutely, yeah. You end up being like, oh, that guy's cool, and then you try to emulate some of the stuff that they do, and then you realize, you know, you can't exactly be them, so you're trying to like, okay, what works for me?
Yeah, what's my spin on that?
Right.
Yeah. You know, and then I had to kind of find my own way after we moved.
Do you feel like it made you more of an outgoing person going from like a small city to a bigger city? Had to meet new people?
Had no choice. And to be honest with you, when I left high school and I came down here, I came to a much bigger city, I didn't know a soul.
Right.
I came to go to Kent State University, didn't know a soul. So if I was going to survive, I was going to have to learn how to, learn how to be a little bit more outgoing, because I was a pretty shy little kid. Learn how to be outgoing, meet people, because people are that's the only way you get anything done, is to understand and relate to other humans. So
yeah, I was just talking about that the other day with somebody about how like Cleveland in general is like most of the people in Cleveland are from Cleveland. Like not a lot of, I mean, we've seen a little bit of an influx in the last couple of years of people moving from other places, but nothing too crazy. But like there's a guy who was one of my beer buyers, and he didn't grow up in Cleveland. He grew up in I think it was like Phoenix or something like that, and just had the hardest time making friends in Cleveland because
he
all
wasn't
those
part of the community as a kid. I get it. Now I've been here I've literally lived in Cuyahoga County for 22 years now. But it took some time. Of course, I found it through the bars, right?
Sure.
Most of my social circle, and frankly, a big piece of my professional circle came from, drinking beer at bars downtown Cleveland. But in order to do that, I had to go sit at the bar by myself, which I still do. Not as much as I did a year or two ago, but I still will go and sit by myself, and that's fine, and make up conversation with somebody I don't know next to me, and not because I'm like weird or anything, but just because it's just easy for me to do. I might
my dad
weird some people out sometimes, but
my dad's a very outgoing, like easy to talk to. What I got from him is I'm a classic oversharer, but like he's definitely a lot more outgoing, and like you kind of have that quality that he does. It was like you're just like easily able to just start talking to, and it's not
he's
like
great.
Yeah, it's like
you're
you just
absolutely right.
you like it almost seems like you had known that person for like years.
He's definitely got that.
Yeah, I mean, like you do that too. Sometimes I'm like, oh, did you know that person? I go, how long have you known that person? And
sometimes
you're like, oh, I never
met
that person before in my life.
20 seconds.
Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes, and there's other times when I'm out and about, and you just, in this town, first of all, I look at Cleveland. Cleveland's it's a good sized town, but it's a good sized tiny town.
Yeah.
Like everywhere you go, you see people you know. When I'm in my hometown of Lewiston and I drive down the street and people wave at you, it's because you do know them or they think they recognize you or whatever. Driving down the streets of Bay Village or Westlake or downtown Cleveland, almost every time I go out, I pass somebody I know. A lot of times it'll be you right down here down the street, or it might be a client or someone that I knew years ago, and I see them. And it's a big, small town.
Yeah, it really is. Like
it's the same kind of tight knit community. It's just on a larger scale.
Yeah, it's very much so a small major city. Like it's really weird because everybody knows each other, and like it's almost to a fault. Like there's just not a lot of people in Cleveland. Like,
and a lot of these people have known each other since they were kids.
Yeah,
through school, and of course you being kind of separated from that, had to propose some challenges for you.
Yeah, because there was no way to growing up, there was like no way to organically meet anybody. So you kind of almost had to just show up to things. Like,
was it like did you have like organized sports that you participated in?
Yeah, I played baseball but like eventually you age out of that because it's all city sports.
Yeah, it goes like into the school system, which
you're
not a part of.
Exactly. So that's pretty much when I started skateboarding, was because I had aged out of.
You lose touch with the athletes, and then you go to skateboarding, which is not necessarily associated with an organization, and now it's just the guys that show up at the park.
Yep. So there was a lot of like just being around social circles.
So if you break your neck skateboarding, you can just blame your mom. It'd be like if you hadn't homeschooled me, I'd probably be retired from the major leagues by now.
Yeah, I was pretty good at baseball, so growing up. But yeah, eventually you age out of it, and then you got to figure out somewhere to like place that energy that you have. And skateboarding was perfect for me because I didn't need anybody to do it.
Yeah,
you just go out and do it, And then you'd occasionally meet people in the neighborhood or like from other neighborhoods
or the police department.
Yeah, which being homeschooled, and I only did schoolwork 3 days out of the week because I'd get it all done. I just get an itinerary. And if I get it all done in 3 days, my grades are good. My parents never really said anything about it.
I don't know if that makes you an underachiever or an overachiever. Because couldn't you have just taken those other 2 days and just gotten better?
as I love to say, I am a well-educated idiot because none of it was because you were doing it in such a small, like you're doing 12-hour days, 3 days at a time. And a lot of that kind of didn't really sink in. You know what I mean? So once I got into, my sophomore year of high school, and then I had to go to college classes early, that was also a huge culture shock for me, and I struggled that first semester big time because, I had to do actual work, and I didn't get to do it at my pace.
Yeah, you were on someone else's program at that point.
Yeah, it was really hard. I struggled. I passed my classes with like some B's and some C's, but that was like the first time I've ever gotten like anything lower than like a B, and I was freaking out. Like I was so scared.
Plus,
like I was
don't
like,
you feel like you got like the home court advantage? Like maybe a little sympathy from mom. Maybe you really had a C, but she's giving you a B. She's like, oh.
well, no, this is when I was at Tri-C.
That's what I'm saying. You were accustomed to.
Oh, that's true. That's like
actually getting a little elevated grade from time to time.
Maybe. I doubt it. My parents aren't those people. They don't. They barely even pay attention. Like my parents are caring. They're nice. They're good people. Mm-hmm. They're caring people, but like they're not nice either.
Was your brother also homeschooled?
Yeah. He was homeschooled pretty much his whole, educational career.
Now, is he a pharmacist or a doctor or something?
He's a doctor now. Yeah, he's a physical therapist.
So your mom just didn't put enough.
Well, I got a
attention
degree
to you, and he got all of it.
No, I mean I have a degree in pharmaceutical engineering. I'm just too big of an idiot to use it. And then my sister, she was kind of like she became a hairstylist. So, she's like a house mom now because she's got 5 kids, but she still uses those skill sets to, when you have 5 boys,
5 kids, she slept through the homeschooling for the home ec or the what class?
Sex education.
Sex ed, yeah. She slept
I don't
through
even know
sex
if
ed.
they had that. I highly doubt it. I don't even remember if I had the talk with my parents.
She only needed to be awake for the prophylactic part.
Yeah. Which I don't. Yeah. What do you mean to defy God in the bedroom? She was. Yeah. I mean,
everything I do in the bedroom defies God. I can guarantee you.
Likewise. I'm hedonistic in that room.
I usually leave my body. I don't even know what's going on in there.
You have to. If you're inside your own head, things end quickly.
Bad.
Yeah,
that's
things end very quickly.
That's
the last place you want to be if you're at. Yeah.
I've had to admit that before. She'd be like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I'm in here." And she's like, "I get it.
Yeah,
I get it."
It's a nice person.
Well, I think she brought it up the first time. She's like, I'm in my head. I can't concentrate."
Sure.
Like, what are you worried about? Some OCD thing. Like, I didn't count the steps before I came upstairs.
Right.
So
yeah.
I can't concentrate on this. I have to go back downstairs and I have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 13 steps to get upstairs.
Or
little things like that.
For some people, it's just like fucking years in the making. Like you'd been friends with that person, or
Oh, then you're thinking about totally different things. Yeah, I've figured out how to turn all that off, but I haven't had that. I mean, my current relationship, I don't have to worry about those things because I've got a really good situation. And there's been times in the past where you have to like turn the switch off and just, like I said, leave your body for a moment. Let your mentality leave the room while you do what you got to do.
Right. Perform.
And then exactly.
So growing up, like, it's tough, like, to meet people organically because you're not in a whole lot of situations to do so. But things like skateboarding helped. Some organized sports, a lot of it was meeting people through the church, and even that was a lot of like arranged friendships. I mean, I'm doing a bit like because I have it in my stand-up now. Is like, growing up homeschooled, like none of your friendships you never meet anybody organically. It's always like set up like some sort of Tibetan wedding, and.
Will you do a play date with my kid? I'll give you 3 goats.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I never added that kind of stuff. That is very funny. I didn't even think to add that in. Like, But it's usually like my mom worked with this other person's mom, and their age range was close enough to mine, and so they would just like, hey.
We've got 2 kids that aren't shitting in diapers. Let's put them in a room.
Right.
They're 10 years different, but one of them's not shitting anymore.
Right. Yeah.
The other one's
hopefully they'll get along or find some sort of common interest, which, I was just on board to like meet anybody and just figure out what they were into. And I think it almost made them a little bit more comfortable because, I was just like, cool, we'll go do that thing. Cause I had no plans,
coming from a small town, there's a lot fewer kids. So we tended to have when I was in Lewiston, we tended to have a wider gap in the kids that we would hang around with age-wise.
I didn't even think about that.
There's just fewer of them around. Now, it didn't hurt that, I have cousins that ranged in age by, I don't even know how many years, 40? No. Probably 30 years of age range difference.
So nobody even really
So there was always older kids around. But that was, something that one of my experiences, I got a lot of, I got to know a lot of kids at a wider age range. Now, when I went and moved to Mason or just south of Lansing, pretty much, there was so many kids my age around, and you're playing the sports, and the kids are all almost within a year or two of each other, and you don't really get to know any of the other age range.
What were some of the sports you'd play growing up?
I played soccer. I had never played soccer before. When I was a little kid, I was playing baseball.
Yeah,
pretty much baseball and basketball.
Same.
I never picked up football or track or anything when I was real little. But then when we moved, soccer was like really huge in the town I was in, so we picked up soccer.
Wow, really?
So I never picked up football. I probably never really played football, and I gave up baseball. By the way, gave up baseball at that point.
What was the big nationality in your hometown?
White kids,
just plain
kids.
white.
In both towns.
Wow.
There was a couple of black people in. There was no black people in Lewiston. A couple of black people in Mason, and a few Asian people, but that was it. It was a very small. The town the second town that I lived in was a farm community. It was a suburb of the state capital. It was a farm community.
And soccer was a big thing in those towns?
Soccer was a huge thing.
Wow, it's so weird because when you think of like Midwest, or northern, America, or a rural area of America, the last thing you're going to think is like a big
soccer moms. Yeah.
Big soccer influence.
It's weird that
especially during that time.
I mean, in northern Michigan, it's just football. They think a little bit about baseball and a little bit about basketball, but it's all about football. Except for one city up there, Traverse City, which is a good-sized town, but it's in the middle of rural Michigan. Soccer was huge there.
Wow.
I didn't know that until, I learned that, when I was a little bit older. But yeah, so everybody played soccer.
Because it seems like those Midwest colder climates, like football and hockey are like the sports.
I do love hockey. I haven't played nearly enough, but I would say after I graduated from high school and would go home to the city that I went to high school in, all the guys wanted to play hockey. I'm like, none of you played before. Well, a couple of guys played, but all of a sudden, everyone was a hockey fan. All of a sudden, I think it had a lot to do with the Detroit Red Wings were just blowing up, and
they had a great team.
The reason that I became a soccer player was because that was right when the AYSO became like a national operation, and it was 1982, and soccer was just blowing up in the country. And I've played that ever since. I have a game tonight. I have a game at 10:00 tonight as a 50-year-old. Hopefully, I don't get hurt. I really enjoy playing. I love the competition. We talked a little bit about that before, but I really love just competing for things, and so I'm still out there doing it. I started pickleball.
Oh, really? Pickleball?
Pickleball. That's totally an old man thing. Great workout.
All right.
Couple people invited me out. I said I'll show up, but I got to borrow a paddle. And I played with them one time, and the next time I came out the next Saturday, I had 2 paddles and a bag and a specialized water bottle and my own paddleball balls. I was ready to go because I loved the competition, and it was easy.
I bet you dominate.
It's a challenging sport, much like curling, which I just picked up, which is also way more difficult than the Olympic guys make it look.
That's so funny to me that I have a lot more respect for curling than I do pickleball. A friend of mine just explained to me what pickleball is. the long story short, I just, for whatever reason, it made me so angry. I was like, this sounds like the miniature golf version of tennis.
It's a giant ping pong ball or ping pong paddle with a wiffle ball.
Yeah.
It's basically
it's tennis for cowards.
It kind of is. It kind of is. It's tennis for really old people. Although old people play tennis. So I was doing that, and I mean, I had gone from, twice a week playing basketball with a very competitive group, and playing soccer once in a while, like once a week during specific times of the year, and volleyball during specific times of the year.
Softball.
And softball, I'll play softball 5 nights a week in the summertime.
Yeah.
I got to slow that down. But softball's not exactly a high impact sport. Basketball, certainly, I get a great workout out of basketball, and I felt like a kid. And I'm out there socializing with other people my age and adult and mentality, most of them. Soccer's a little different. Like when we play soccer, our team's a bunch of old white guys. We're playing against like little Hispanic, 20-year-old Hispanic kids or Arabic kids. I'm learning
my
things.
People.
Like the other day, one of the kids, who was a Hispanic kid, got hit in the nutsack with a ball, and he went down, and I just stood over him, and I felt bad for him. It was a friendly thing, and I was just trying to help him up, and I'm like, I didn't know what to say, and I just looked at him, I'm like, huevos? And he's like, huevos. So he got that I understood what happened to him. But so I'm learning it's even halfway through my life, which I like to think I'm about halfway there, maybe not quite halfway. I'm still learning cultural things.
I don't know, man.
But I
think halfway is a pretty solid marker for you, because like you're a fit guy who like you're active, like you're yeah. I think you're a lot young. You seem a lot younger than your age might suggest.
I get that a lot. I know it's not just the way I look; it's the way that I act and stuff like that. But
that's what people say about me.
Yeah, I act like a 12-year-old
yeah.
most of the time. But my grandmother lived to 103, so I figure, if I can survive my mom living to be 103 as well, I probably have a good long life ahead of me. But it's a lot of genetics and stuff like that. But I just try to keep a positive attitude. That's all youth is a positive attitude.
Yeah,
still thinking something good might happen.
You think so?
Think of all the young people that look old. They're all defeated. Right? They're
jaded and bitter.
They're not defeated because they look old. They look old because they're defeated.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't know if youth is necessarily like a place of positivity. I feel like it's more of like there's a lot of angst there. I know it was for me.
It wasn't for me. I mean, there was times as a teenager where you're pissed off at the world.
Sure.
But for me, there wasn't a ton. Right? It was I had a pretty happy childhood.
Yeah, mine wasn't bad. I don't know, like I guess maybe it was just a brief period that I seemed to like focus or harp on. But now that I do think of it, like a lot of the things that I was like looking forward to was like riffing bits with friends. You know what I mean? Or going to like a youth group, and then like I had some sort of funny quip that I had come up with, like I had the time.
I always try to be the funniest guy in the room. It's hard to do with you, but I always try to be the funniest guy in the room. That, by the way, is one way that I'm able to relate to people. I use a joke to soften.
You have a very good sense of humor.
But as a little guy, I was just quiet because I was afraid to say something because I didn't want to be wrong, or I didn't want to be embarrass myself. So I had to come out of that shell eventually. And that took a long time for me. Actually, when I was in college, I remember one moment in college when I was just like, if I'm going to survive here, I'm going to have to meet people.
Mm.
And I just said to myself, I just convinced myself I'm just going to go do it. I'm just going to start to talk to girls, and I'm going to, and if somebody's doing something that interests me, I'm going to go talk to them about it. I'm going to try to learn as much as I can about people and stuff like that. And actually, it was like just a moment. I just woke up and I was like, these other people do it.
Yeah.
It's like poor people buy houses. I can buy a house. Of course, they're poor the rest of their lives. But I had a moment where I just kind of made that realization that I was going to need to come out of the shell in order to survive. And I've been out of that shell ever since. And it's worked. It's worked for me. I have my career essentially right now is business development relating to people, and convincing them that that me and my people are the right people to give us money to do things that anybody in town could do if they applied themselves. I just, without that ability to communicate with people, which I probably learned as a little guy, but didn't utilize until I was a little bit older. We wouldn't be sitting in this room.
Yeah. I mean, what age did you come about of like no longer being afraid to fail or being embarrassed by failure?
I'm still embarrassed by failure.
Same. Yeah.
I might hide it sometimes, but I think I'd say just recently. So we've had this business for 10, 11 years or something like that. It was probably 4 or 5 years into it when I was like, I didn't think that if the littlest thing went wrong was the end of the world. I still hate failure, and I have a huge fear of failure, but that's the drive that I have to succeed.
Yeah.
I also know along the way, there's going to be battles lost, but certainly I don't expect to fail anymore.
I feel like in the last like 4 years, like I've been okay and like almost confident in my failures. Like, because I'm like, oh, okay, this is one more failure closer to succeeding, or like one more failure closer to getting where I want to be.
That's what's necessary. And like you seem to embrace bombing.
Yeah. Well, I have no choice.
Well, yeah. Well, you have to embrace it because it happens so often.
I don't know if you know this. I'm not a great comedian.
I don't know. My girlfriend just texted me. She says, hey, so-and-so, somebody's doing a show and they need another comedian. Can I give them your friend's name?
Oh, cool.
I'm like, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And then I'm like, oh, I should also give him Jeremy's name.
You give him Bill Squire?
Yeah, Bill Squire.
Or Brian Kenny?
Yeah, Brian Kenny's funny. A few years ago he did for our Christmas party, like just coincidentally somehow.
I wish I was there for that.
We booked him to do a private show. And I didn't know who he was. He was
so charming,
hilarious. He did a great job for us. But yeah, it's all about inner confidence, right? And as a young homeschooled guy, it might have taken a little more. Well, no, you probably are outgoing now because you had to be in order to meet more people.
Yeah. And I don't know. Well, I don't know. It's tough because sometimes I feel like I'm I'm completely happy and capable. Like the pandemic was like the best thing that had happened to me in a long time.
I loved like not having to communicate with human beings.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I really liked that. It was able to pick and choose the people that I wanted to talk to.
Sure. It was great. And then you didn't even really have to go anywhere to go hang out with them. You just like,
just sit at home, get fat, and chat across a digital media.
It was amazing. It was so great. But like, I'm capable of being completely like isolated and alone, and like I'm fine with that. But like, I guess in a sense, I had to like train myself into meeting people, but I guess I never really dropped the whole like being weird and quirky. Like now I'm more of like able to embrace it, where before I was just like, oh, I'm trying to fit in and be as normal as possible and not try and like, shake the boat too much. But now I would say right around 2005 was like right when I like embraced the fact like, oh, I'm a weird guy and I should lean into it because that's what makes me funny and like, it's
what makes you unique.
Right. I think that's I don't have a choice in it. Like I just have to.
Anybody else like you? I know a guy that looks exactly like you.
Yeah, there's plenty of guys who look like exactly like
the guy
me.
that makes the mead down the street. He looks identical to you. I've mistaken you for him before.
I can't tell you how often I get photos of doppelgangers, and they're like remarkably close.
I get somebody once in a while to be like, I know you from somewhere, and I'll be like, well, I'm a big star. No, I just like I look like every other fucking guy in town.
Yeah,
there was a dude that when I was playing rec football, this dude was in my league, and we looked a little bit alike, and we kind of joked about it once. But one time, my ex-wife's friends sat and talked to this guy for a half hour at the bar, and he didn't tell them what his name was. They thought they were talking to me. Thank God he wasn't a dick and didn't say something like something bad.
Yeah.
But they came over to me later, and they're like, did you change your shirt? And I'm like, that's not me, you fucking moron. You've known me for years.
Yeah, sometimes I have like my big social things have been like trying really hard not to say the inappropriate thing.
Or trying to find a way to frame the inappropriate message in an appropriate way.
I've gotten really good at that part. There's so many scenarios in which like I find myself just like saying really idiotic things because, I find them either amusing or whatever, but it'd be surprising how often I just forget that I had even said it. Like it happens a lot. Like, and people bring it up to my wife about like, oh, you can't believe what Jeremy said. And they'll like bring it up to her and she'll be like, look, he's an idiot. He probably wasn't even listening to himself. Like, so you shouldn't, you shouldn't listen to him. Like at this point, it's kind of that on, she like almost makes it on them. Like it's kind of cool the way she kind of like finagles that. Like, yeah, he's going to say some wild shit, but he's like harmless, like
I've had my moments where, and I remember every one of them distinctly, where I've said or done something that, in a setting that just wasn't appropriate, but turned out to be hilarious. And I don't remember them fondly. Usually it's like I remember, this is years and years ago, my aunt's still around, thankfully. We were sitting around a table or something like that, and I had hooked up with this girl. This is fucking 30 years ago. And that she knew. And it had been like a year. It was like a year later. It was at a wedding. It was at one of the family weddings, because I'm a scumbag, I guess. And I had connected with this woman, and the woman had an older sister, and the older sister was just gorgeous, just super hot. The younger sister was good enough for that day, I suppose.
She'll do
something. I think I had run into the older sister, and my aunt was with me or something like that. And I'm like, who is that? Because I didn't recognize her. He's like, oh, that's so-and-so. And I'm like, I looked at my aunt. I'm like, oh, man, I hooked up with the wrong one. And I'm like, ooh, that just... She got a kick out of it. But I just was like, I'm talk about that with my senior citizen aunt about, that stuff.
I had a guest on, and she took it really well. But, like, she was talking about her sister, and I said, when someone... Well, they're going to see it. So it was like when Erin talks about her sister, she's talking about the hot one.
Oh, yeah.
She's my guest. I've known her for so long that it like she knows that I'm going to say something stupid. I think she was
herself for it.
Yeah, I think she was actually quite impressed that it had taken me like an hour into the conversation to pull something like that out. So,
yeah. I get it. Mostly because I don't have a hot sister.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, how was it growing up with an older sister? Because I'm the oldest of three, so like.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. We ask these questions all the time. What was it like to have a brother? I don't know what the difference would be.
Sure.
Like someone, would you rather have a brother? I'm like, I don't know. There's either you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
She was good. She's 5 years older.
Well, so there's right probably
right now she's 4 years. She's like 4.5 years difference. We didn't get along great when we were little, just because the age difference, and she was a teenage girl while I was trying to figure out how to be a young man, and then I was a teenager. She was off at college, and we just and she'll admit she can sometimes be a pain in the ass, but so can I.
Mm-hmm.
But as we grew older, same with, by the way, the older cousins, because we were all very, very close. I've become close with a lot of the older kids that you just didn't relate with before, because I think as you age, the distance in time becomes less important.
Yeah.
As we get older, it becomes less important in your relationships, especially with family. There's probably a clicking point at the age 21 where it's like, come drink a beer with me. I'm a 40-year-old, you're 21, let's go drink a beer, and all of a sudden you're best buddies. I think there's some of that there. But, I didn't get along with my sister tremendously well as a little one, as a younger guy. But, now we're in a really good spot. I mean, the whole family's in a really good spot now.
It is funny. It's a funny point you brought up, because like there is like an age where like it's almost like the older person's trying to live vicariously through the younger person.
In a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, and then same with the younger person trying to live a little vicariously through the older person, thinking, okay, like this party's not going to end.
Yeah.
And they're both wrong.
You're absolutely right.
They're both very, very wrong.
You learn that quick at some point. You learn that real quick at some point.
You're both living some sort of fantasy at that point.
Yeah, well, you're sharing the experience, and you're meeting in the middle. You're both wrong, but you're meeting in the middle. You're meeting in the middle somewhere.
It's what we call in the comedy in Cleveland or Northeast Ohio. We call that the funny stop, where both careers meet. The one on the
guys
down
that are coming
slope,
down, and the guys that are going up. Yeah,
they all meet at the funny stop. So,
well, I think you know what perspective I want to hear about your experience.
Sure,
I want to hear your mom's.
Yeah, that would be
not what was it like homeschooling. I want to know because you're talking with a bunch of guys. You're talking with me about what your experience. What formed you into what you are.
Yeah.
Right. So how that experience impacted you and how you're relating that to other people. I don't want to know about her experience homeschooling you. I want to know how her being a homeschool mom ruined her life.
Yeah, I mean, well,
that's a full-time gig. I look at it like this. Look at those parents during COVID. We talked a little bit about what it was like for us, but the moms
who chose it
during COVID, moms were superheroes for a year, 18 months, or whatever,
sure,
because dads weren't fucking doing it. I can guarantee you some were, but don't get me wrong, but none of my friends were.
Right,
moms were cooking and cleaning, became teacher, and they're still working fucking jobs. Like I had women employees that did it all. And I'm like, you fucking superhero, because now you're really doing it all. Now you're also the teacher,
and they're in the process. They're saving you money because you only have to pay them.
Well, you only pay them about 75%. I'm just kidding. You pay a man anyway.
Yeah, you only have to pay them so much.
Yeah. No, but they were superheroes during that. So basically, your mom, I mean, I don't know. She didn't have a full-time job while she was homeschooling, did she?
No.
Okay.
She worked.
So she had that slightly detached. But
she worked jobs, though. She would work like a couple days a week. I mean, I would say that she never had a job that was like very time consuming.
She wasn't, getting up in the morning and packing a briefcase with her lunch and her papers and going to a 40-hour-a-week job and coming back.
Right. Yeah.
The women during COVID were doing that,
which is wild.
But on the other side is they also weren't. The women during COVID probably weren't writing the lesson plans and stuff like that. That stuff was given to them.
Yeah, so she would do that like, either Sunday night or Monday morning. She'd make an itinerary for the week and like all the things they need to complete and hand me, it would all be blocked out. Yep. And whenever I got it done, I got it done. I could take me, all week. As long as I got it done within the 7 days, they were pretty happy.
You were good with it.
But I would say more often than not, would just knock it out in the first 3 days of the week. Just get it over with.
That probably develops into a good work ethic.
Yeah, but I
don't know that has translated into a career for you, but it. I wish. That model maybe didn't stick for too long, but that does, because it's like I can get rewarded. I'm rewarded by having time off. By working hard for a while.
But it's unfortunately the real world doesn't necessarily work like that. So, when you got older, you're like, you realize like, none of this is really on my time schedule. Like I can't just work really hard for 3 days.
Yeah, you have to, because other people are relying on connecting with you in different ways. That's
you have to meet them at like on their schedule too.
Yeah,
so
like selling beer.
Yeah,
like you're not getting up at 7 in the morning going, I'm going to go ahead and do my 4 hours and then go home because it's only 11 and no one's open to sell beer to.
Right.
So
yeah, it's really just dependent on like I mean, I learned that in my sophomore year of high school, having to go to 2 college classes. Like that was just such a huge culture shock to me. And Aaron, who was one of the guests I had previously, was like one of those people who went to that community college at the same time, and she was a part of the group of kids that was like mostly intimidated with. So like they were the cool group of people, and like
there was a cool group at community college.
Oh yeah, they were definitely the ones. They're like the kids smoking out in this like courtyard and playing hacky sack. But when you're 16, No, I was younger. Yeah, no, 16. And that's like, and your only real like interactions with people, either like some sort of organized sport or church.
Right.
Those are your only real interactions. Maybe
Yeah.
some of the kids around the neighborhood, but like, that was huge. That was like a huge culture shock for me.
Do you think that experience of being homeschooled made you closer to your siblings? Or do you think, and I know it's just kind of like the question is like, oh, what was it like having a sister? Do you think you would have been as close with your siblings as you are, or have the same relationship with your siblings as you do if you were all in different classes in a giant building full of other kids?
That is a great question. I honestly think it may have brought us closer because of the lack of time spent together. Because I think once we were all older, like we're still close, we talk, but like I think that we were able to go extended periods of time without talking to one
Yeah.
another because we had spent so much time together.
My view of your relationship with them is not that you're any closer or any less close than anybody
No,
else with their
yeah,
siblings.
yeah.
I just wondering, do you think that impacted your relationship? I mean, or was it like I can't wait to get the hell away from these people because I'm around them so much?
I don't even think it was that.
Or was it
even
the common enemy? Like everyone, y'all had one enemy, and that was the teacher / mom.
No, I was thinking it was. I don't think we ever really. It was just kind of like, oh, we moved on to different phases in our lives. I don't know if there was really any. I hate to say it, but I don't know if there was really any thought behind it. It was just kind of like, oh, like I'd spent a lot of time with that person, so I don't necessarily feel like, oh, now that we're a little older, that we got to call each other all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're homeschoolers, so we're like completely capable of like
Communicating with the outside world.
yeah, or just like just shutting things down and not really talking.
Yeah.
Like so, which is funny that like I think about my first semester at Tri-C and like I had to do like a public speaking presentation, and that just horrified me. It was like the scariest thing I ever had to do.
And now you try to do it at least once a night.
Yeah,
In front of people that are drunk.
Yeah, and strangers.
On purpose. You seek it out now.
Yeah, now it's like exposure therapy.
Yeah, well, you got the bug.
Yeah,
you got the bug from that class.
Yeah, it's just being homeschooled. It's you kind of go through these weird, awkward phases of like trying things out that may not make sense to people because there's so many people in my past who've been like, why do you do the things that you do? It's because I'm trying it out socially,
Yeah.
as I didn't have those interactions.
Yeah.
So to me, it's almost like throwing darts at a board and see where it sticks.
You didn't get them in the same volume as somebody that was rode a bus to school and sat in a room with a bunch of other kids.
Was bullied.
Of all the different types of kids. There's other quiet ones, but there's also the assholes and the bullies. And then there's the jocks, and then there's the cliques that you probably didn't experience until you became an adult, which they still exist in our world.
So this is an interesting thing to kind of stumble upon. Like, so for you, going from like, who do you think you had more issues with bullies with in the smaller city or the bigger city?
In the bigger city,
by
volume. And, and when I was in that little town, there were knuckleheads there, but not. Everyone was kind of like a big family. Even today, everyone's kind of still like a big family. And plus, I came from basically the biggest family in town, so it's like
you kind of those older cousins.
Yeah, not everyone. Little kids don't know the difference, but people don't really mess around with the family too much. Not that we're big, tough guys down there, but there's a lot of respect for that family in that town. But then when you're the small fish in the big pond, I was a target, but I also, I was tall. I wasn't as fat as I am now, but I was a tall kid and I connected immediately not immediately, but I connected pretty quickly with a good group of people that kind of, didn't really get hassled too much when I moved to that town.
Nice. So, like, what was your social circle like in either one? I guess really.
I was much like now. I had a wide range of friends.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
The jocks and the nerds and they weren't called that, but my best friend was like the star basketball player, and of course we were all part of the soccer team, so that we were, we had our little soccer crew, but there was also, I was in band for a year in high school. I learned how to play the trombone terribly. Probably don't even know how to hold it now, but so there was friends with the band. The smartest kid that I've ever met was, I was very close with that kid, and he was a super geek. The guy's I don't know what he does now.
He's Elon Musk. No, I'm just kidding. No. That guy's an idiot.
Yeah. No, this cat's guy's name is Ryan Bennick. He's when we were in middle school, they were busing him over to the high school.
Wow.
Take calculus. And he ended up, I don't know where, I know where he lives now, but I think he not sure exactly what his career path led him to. I think he worked through Sony. I mean, he was basically a scientist or an educator, science educator maybe. Brilliant dude. But that was one of my good buddies, and I could kind of go from one side to the other. And I was a metalhead. I might have been a part of the jock type crew, but I was a metalhead. So all the guys in black t-shirts smoking cigarettes and riding their skateboards in the back parking lot, I was, they were cool with me. Like, hey, and it didn't hurt that we all went to the same parties and drank from the same kegs and that sort of stuff too. But
yeah, I'm not surprised to find out that you were kind of
like now.
I
got weird comic friends, and I got guys that I show up in meetings in Ferraris and have yachts.
And Scuba Steve's somewhere in the middle.
And I got Scuba Steve, who's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, who still rides a skateboard or a one wheel around. And the age range varies from friends that are in their 60s and up that are close confidants down to 20-year-olds.
Right.
It's not the age thing. That construct is not that important to me. It's kind of what you bring to the relationship.
Sure.
Sometimes you don't have to bring much and it's still fun. Other times, you need to bring more to the table in order for me to give the respect back.
Well, I'm definitely a testimony of not bringing much.
No, you bring a lot. I love, we've had a lot of fun. We've had fun doing this a few times.
Yeah.
And certainly having a beer or two, although you don't do that anymore.
But I'm still out there partying.
The Gunslinger Bowl.
Oh,
episode. God. But yeah, so it's for me, the relationships are just about the connection. You don't have to bring value. Someone doesn't have to provide me with value. They just have to provide me with a good feeling.
Yeah.
You are a guy that brings both, but there's plenty of people out there that you can kind of put them in that category where it's like, I like hanging out with them, but I don't need anything out of this.
Right. Yeah, and there's people like that, and it's like you don't need anything really from anyone necessarily. Just be a good person to talk to. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you're.
Well, that's how we hit it off. We sat at the bar at Sibling and just started riffing back and forth until we reached the point where there were people behind us listening to the conversation and not interacting. They were just so entertained with our inane banter, like just the dumbest things ever. But
yeah, and then you're like, we should do a podcast.
We should record this.
Yeah.
And now all this shit's here.
And then the rest was history.
Yeah. Of course, we never published any of those things.
Thank God.
Yeah, they were entertaining, but not so great compared to what you're doing now.
I don't know. They were good conversations. They're just we were kind of like figuring it out. So we kind of like, there would be times where we try and push the boundaries a little bit because we knew we could get away with it because it's podcasting and wasn't necessarily, we can either, if we didn't feel proud of it, we can get rid of it later. It just
goes away. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so there was times like that where it was kind of like, oh boy.
We never really kept anything really on point. We started with a goal and we just kind of let it flow. But it was fun. It was a good release of energy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Still fun.
Both of them that we did were good releases of energy.
I'd still plan on releasing some of that stuff that we did for when we were reviewing those music videos. Yeah.
I think that could be done. I've always thought we can always improve on that stuff.
So all right. Well, I think we are where we at in time wise.
Yeah, we're on about 90 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. You want to plug some of your some of your stuff, like some of the businesses that you do? And
we need another 90 minutes.
Well, we just plug the like social medias and stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, you can find our the 6mo companies, which is architectural, engineering, materials testing at www. This is how I'm going to start saying it, by the way. www.sixmoae.com. Like I'm going to spell out COM from now on. No, 6moae.com. We have some new announcements coming out relative to the services that we're going to provide and how we're going to provide them. But we design stuff, man. We design stuff, and then now with some of the new businesses, we design stuff and make sure it's built right. One of the fun things for me is I get to start shopping for like real equipment.
Oh, really?
Like in March, out in Vegas, I get to look at
drill
rigs. Basically, a bulldozer that drills that bulldozes straight down. I get to look at that for myself instead of just seeing it.
You going to Vegas for that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Every 3 years. But yeah, so we've got a lot of that stuff going on. Inkswell's still out there. We're still leasing spaces, not in this particular building, but Inkswell's out there still operating, and we've got some new property management stuff happening. But generally, we're out there designing buildings, whatever it takes to make a buck.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
This is fun.
And this is not weird, just homeschooled. Your host, Gheramy. Thank you to Patrick Thornton for being a guest.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
Have a good evening, everybody.